Hey, what up everybody? I'm Pastor Matt.
And I'm AJ.
And we're so excited to be doing this video today about friendship. We did an interview at Otter Creek Gerald Baptist Church, and a lot of people at church said it was great. So we said, hey, let's make one for our YouTube channel. So about friends, AJ and I have been friends ever since he walked into my college dorm and saw this thing. Right? We're both drag racers, and this means something to us. But what we're going to talk about today is that our relationship is not just built on one thing. Because if your relationship is built on one thing, then it can be torn down by
one thing.
Yeah. So the relationship had to grow and had to develop into other aspects as well. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So, of course, we're going to look at the Bible. In the Bible, it talks about family aspects, very important. The family was everything in the Bible. So there are three aspects that revolve around the family for the Bible. And we're going to talk about those three things and then ask AJ three questions about those in his ministry, but we'll get to that in a second. So the first one is honor and shame. All right, honor and shame is a culture. It's very important. The next is tradition. And then the last is land. So again, honor, shame, tradition, and land. I'm going to read from the book of Romans, chapter 12, verses 9 through 16. I read out of the NIV, so I'll put the words on the screen. Ready? Now. Love must be sincere. Hate what is evil. Cling to what is good. Be devoted to one another in love. Honor one another above yourselves. Never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer. Share with the Lord's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be conceited. Those verses are what we're going to focus on as we ask AJ these three questions, again, about honor, shame, about tradition, and about land. So the first is a two-part question, and it is, AJ, in your time of ministry in Honduras, can you tell us, one, how someone honored you, and then also how someone maybe brought shame to you?
So I thought back about, the honor and the shame thing, about a time of transition. It was in time of transition when I was transitioning from GBIM to being an independent missionary in Honduras. And it was at that time of transition that I really felt some daggers being thrown my way and some hurtful things came about and were said. But I always knew I was following God's calling on my life, and that's what I had to do. And one day I was at the airport picking somebody up. And also was a GBI Mission 1 team that was coming out as well for the missionaries to pick up at that time, the GB missionaries to pick up there at that time. And I knew the team. They were from Western Kentucky. And I knew some people on the team. And then I was looking for some people that I knew more personally. And I was looking for the pastor. And then the pastor came out because he was the team leader. And I talked to him. He came over and talked to me. And we started talking, and he said, I know you're going through some hard stuff. I went through some hard stuff myself, and people that I thought were in my circle and people that were to protect me, they kind of threw daggers at me as well. So I know what you're going through, and I'm praying for you. And let me just tell you, you're doing the right thing. And it was at that moment that it just confirmed everything that I'd been going through and everything that I knew God was speaking to me. And confirmation is huge, for me at least in life and in ministry, to know God's telling me one thing, and then when somebody that doesn't really know the situation tells me the same thing, it's like, wow, God is definitely in this and I'm following the right direction. And the awesome thing is Steve Dame was that pastor, and now he's serving in Saipan Community Church as a General Baptist pastor there. So it's amazing to see what God continues to do in his life as well.
I really love that story, and it relates directly to what we like to do for running water events. At running water events, we say that you need to make a difference here, there, and everywhere. We firmly believe that when you are making a difference here, you will make a difference everywhere. Maybe it won't be going like Pastor Steve did to Saipan, but you will pray for people. You will send them cards. You'll send them financial support. You'll send them emotional support by calling them, emailing them, checking on them on Facebook. When you're invested locally here, you will naturally be invested everywhere when it is for His glory. And that's what's so important. I also think the Bible, again, they're very family oriented in the Bible, but there's a verse in Proverbs that says, hey, if you're going through distress, go to your neighbor, ask them for help, because better is a close by neighbor than a family member who is far away. And that means relationally or geographically. Maybe your family member is distant. We've all had family members who are distant because they hurt us. And that's what we're getting ready to ask AJ about, this shame question. But AJ was so far away in Honduras, speaking a different language. He was outside of the General Baptist comfort zone that he had been in so long. But then Steve transcended all of those boundaries and went to him and became that close by neighbor. All right, so the second part of that question, who has brought maybe some shame to you in your time of ministry in Honduras?
Serving in ministry in general, you have to have thick skin. And because there's always going to be people criticizing and throwing daggers and trying to tear you down because they're either jealous or they have personal agendas. And so what God's doing in your life and what God's called you to do, so you just have to keep on doing it. But it's during those times over the past 10 years that I've learned sometimes you can't trust your Christian brothers. Sometimes they want to destroy you because they're jealous, like I said. And so I would say the most difficult time that I've had was during that time of transition that I mentioned earlier, and the daggers that were thrown at me, people that had praised me and supported me so much, and then in flipping a light switch, they were gone, and they no longer were there to support in that manner. So I would say that's the hardest time that I felt the most shame, a friend shaming me.
The people who are closest to us, obviously, we all know that's who could hurt us the most. We think about our lives and we're like, oh, they were my best friend, and then just dropped off. But AJ said something really great. It's not just surfing overseas. That might heighten it, when then you feel like you're all alone because you're speaking a different language, you're using a different currency, you're around different people, you're the only one who looks like you. So yeah, that heightens it. But even if you're serving here in the States, you're serving in your hometown, those relational dynamics, when friends stab you in the back. And something we pointed out when we did this at Otter Creek Church was that Christians, we all hurt people, unfortunately. We as Christians, we've hurt people. Other Christians, they have hurt us. But we can't say, oh, that's why I don't go to church, because Christians, we got to look at our scripture here, and love must be sincere. All right, so we need the next part of that, hate what is evil and cling to what is good. Hate what is evil. Get rid of that selfishness of ourselves. Get rid of that selfishness of others. Hate it and cling to the good. I know there is good in people. I know that my friends, they most of them want the best for me and want the best for this ministry. And that is what we need to love. All right, the second question we have for AJ goes from honor to shame now to tradition. So for you, when you're thinking about friendship, what does tradition mean for you?
Tradition in friendship, is something that can't be purchased or cultivated. It's just something that happens. For me and Matt, it started off with this clock right here. But it's not what has kept us together all these 13, 14 years later. It all comes back to the main focus that is the priority in both of our lives, and that's following God's purpose and calling on our lives. So when a friendship is based in circles around Christ, it's amazing to see what we can do together. One of the sayings and one of the slogans all of my life that I've heard is doing together what we can't do alone. Mm-hmm. And together, me and Matt can do a lot of stuff through Christ, because that's the center and the focus of our friendship.
So we look at our next verse there in verse 10. It says, be devoted to one another, love, honor one another above yourselves. And then 11, never be lacking in zeal, but keep your spiritual fervor serving the Lord. So when you think of others above yourself, you're doing it because you're serving the Lord in that faithfulness. And it's the thing that, even though it took me 7 years of him being in Honduras to finally go visit him, or sometimes we may not be able to speak every day on the phone or every week on Facebook Messenger, or maybe 3 months, we know that that connection is still there. That we're still both pursuing what we're trying to pursue, because, people here in the States, we're like, oh yeah, things, time, busy, schedules. But then when one of you's in another country and then the other's on the other side of the world, it gets difficult. But you know that, hey, we're going to make sacrifices. We're going to put others above ourselves. We're going to reach out to them. And we're going to do what we need to do, however we do that, for his glory. And that is the continual theme here, as family as the center, or friendship in the center, is making sure that God is the center of that serving him for his glory. Because otherwise that selfishness comes in, and then our tradition becomes, for ourselves, and how can we make ourselves better, or how can we help just our friendship only. But no. The importance is, how can we as best friends help change the world for his glory? The last question is one about land. And again, it's 2 parts. So how have friends helped you get new land? But also, what does new land mean to you in ministry and missions and in Honduras?
In ministry, we're always dreaming of new land. As churches, local congregations, as outreach and ministries, new land is something we should always be dreaming about, because it means God is speaking and giving us vision and focus, right? So in international missions, it's the same thing. We're always dreaming of new land that God is preparing our hearts for, preparing our ministry for. And so for me, one of the best times for new land, where I was just blown away at what God is doing, was when I first went on the mission field. You have to raise a certain number of dollars every month to be able to go and have a whole year saved up in an account before you even go. And so it was during that time where churches came around, put faith in me, put faith in the calling that God was putting on my life, and supported me to be able to obtain that new land. And what's amazing, 12 years into this journey of fundraising and 10 years of serving in Honduras, God still continues to provide people to make new land possible through donors and prayer partners and people that come and serve along with us, and ministry partners, and so many more things like that.
So AJ, you've told me a story about, with the Special Needs Center, you had some boys who you were looking after, and God had given you this vision, and he had given you, hey, this is where I want to go, but for you it was impossible. But, spoiler alert, God works miracles. Can you tell us that story?
Yeah, so in 2019, after about 7 years of serving in Honduras, I thought my time there was coming to an end. See, for the previous 5 years, I'd been working specifically with a group of special needs boys. There was 13 of them altogether. And they had been abandoned by their families, forgotten by society, and forsaken by their government, the child welfare services. And during that time I met them, we fought tooth and nail to be able to just make sure they had a bed to sleep in, food, medications, and just the basic necessities to survive. And it was a monumental task. And my prayer was, during this entire 5 years that I was working with these boys, is that God would either open the door for me to start a facility and a place for them that could fulfill their needs above and beyond, or that he would open doors for a place to them to go that was beyond our wildest dreams. Well, in January of 2019, God answered that prayer, and it wasn't in the form of the answer that I might have wanted myself, which was for the boys to stay with me, for me to be able to take care of the boys and care for them and provide everything they needed. But overnight, God opened the door for them to go to a place that was beyond our wildest dreams. What they walked into overnight would have taken me a lifetime and $1 million to recreate. And they, because of God's favor and answer to prayer, went in overnight. And within a few weeks, they were moving on their way to their new home, forever home. But it was during that time I started feeling, okay, God, what's next for me? I was mourning the loss of a ministry, but I still had to praise God. I was like, God, are you sure this is the way it's supposed to be? Is it not supposed to be this way? When God answers prayer sometimes, it's not always the results that we always think we wanted. But it's turned out to be a fantastic opportunity for the boys and for me in ministry. There's not very many missionaries that can get to say they saw their ministry project to completion. And so I was thinking, maybe it's time for me to come back to the States. Maybe it's time for this chapter of my life to come to an end. And so I started praying and seeking God, and I came and visited the States for a few weeks, and Matt came down and visited. I had just turned 30, I think, at that time. And I was like, okay, maybe this is the next step. Maybe this is the next place for me to go. And within a few weeks of those prayers, a ministry partner organization came and approached me about joining their missionary team. And I said I'd pray about it. And the main reason they asked me was because they wanted to start a special needs communication center. And they knew that I had some experience and some connections within the city and different opportunities. So I said, let's pray about it. And within a few weeks, I had been accepted and had become a Mission on the Move missionary. And so for me, the new land that God gave me that I wasn't expecting was a children's home that cares for 23 children on a daily basis, an after-school education program that provides homework help and a hot meal to 70 kids on a daily basis, and the opportunity to help develop and come see what God is going to do with this new communication center. So for me, I've received in the past 2 years new land I never dreamed of. It wasn't even on my radar, but God wasn't done with me in Honduras yet. And it's amazing to say the boys are doing fantastic in their new home, and they're exactly where God meant for them to be.
You talk about the boys, and you wanted them to be with you. I think a lot of times in ministry, wherever we are in the world, that we can get that way, right? We can say, hey, like, this was my vision, and I want the boys here, and I want this project, whatever project you're going through, and you're like, I helped get it to here. Like, don't take it away from me. Like, this is very important to me. And that can happen in anything, but God's way is best. And when we're praying for something and you see that door is closing or the ship is sailed or whatever analogy you want to use, that's moving on, and you need to be okay with that. And maybe there's a different vision or just a transition in the vision. That was the other thing, a part of that new land that AJ was talking about at the very beginning of his, hey, I want to go to Honduras. People bought into him, yeah. But more importantly, people bought into the vision God had given him. When they're supporting him financially, supporting him physically, emotionally, relationally, when they're supporting him these ways, it's because they've bought in to his vision that God has given him. And that's true for all of us. When someone, whether it's, a super big ministry or it's just, hey, I think that my life needs to go in this direction because God has said this, a new job or a new location, a new family unit, new family member, whatever. If that's the vision that God has given them, how can we come alongside and support that? And it's not just always financially. Yes, financially is important. But how can we support them emotionally by empowering them, by trusting them, by saying, hey, this is God's vision for you. It's not my vision. Like, I trust that you're going to do what God has called you to do. And it goes the same with us. When maybe it's in your local church, maybe it's in your family unit, your kids like, hey, mom, dad, I want to do this. All right. If God has empowered them to do that, you empower them to do it. You trust them to do it. And have you ever made a mistake in your ministry?
Oh, definitely.
Oh, definitely. We all have. And it happens, right? Move on and say, no, there's new land coming. Like we keep pushing. We all make mistakes, but with that grace, with that forgiveness, with that verse 9, love must be sincere. That love of patience, love is kind, love is slow to anger. What is love, and how do we show that to our friends and our family? All right, AJ is going to wrap this up by sharing, a little bit more about his ministry, what they do, but also how you can get connected with him and help support him again, not just financially, but also prayerfully, emotionally, relationally, having conversations with him.
So, Mission on the Move was founded in the late 80s with a refugee center in Tapachula, Mexico. And then in 1998, after Hurricane Mitch, they came, and the country had been completely devastated. The infrastructure system has been set back 20 years by one hurricane. And Mission on the Move founder, Ed Cadle, he said, there's people in the mountains literally starving to death. So they came in to the community where we minister now, and started a feeding program. And through the years, God has been faithful to give Mission on the Move new land to develop ministries. And what is now an education program that gives homework help and a hot meal every day, and school uniforms, and helps with school supplies and medical needs in our community. God has given so much to Mission on the Move. And then a few years back, it was given the opportunity to start a children's home. And it was mainly intentionally to be a transition center for kids that had been abandoned, to see if there was a good, viable option for them to be reintegrated into their family, or for them to be on the adoption list and adopted either domestically or internationally. And you know, sometimes government plans don't always work out, so you turn and you pick the ball up and you continue doing the next best thing. And that was creating a family-style children's home. And so that's what we've been doing at the Oaks of Righteousness. And so new land continues to be given to Mission on the Move on a daily basis. And now the education program's growing. The education program, we're opening a special needs communication center. You know, we're looking and helping with different special needs children in the community. One of those things being with deaf children and mute children, and with the hope of teaching them sign language. And not only teaching the child sign language, but teaching the parent sign language. And so that opens up communication in the home for the first time. And it also opens up discipleship possibilities with the parents as they're coming and learning sign language throughout the week. And so it's amazing to see what God is continuing to do. And for me, I'm just along for the ride. I have been blessed to be with Mission on the Move and seeing what God's doing and be a small part of what He has called me to do, and the mission and ministry that Mission on the Move is doing there in Honduras. God continues to give me new land, either through my local community church and the ministry there, or through the ministry, full-time ministry opportunities that I have. Visit missiononthemove.org for more information concerning our ministry projects, or find us on Facebook, Mission on the Move Honduras. There's all types of information on there, and some new special social media campaigns always coming out. So join us, contact us, email me, whatever you want to do. We would love to talk to you.
I'll drop some links below so that you can just click on those and take those to where you need to go. But one thing that I love that AJ said is how we're going to wrap it up. He said that they're going to teach the parents how to speak sign language, and that becomes a discipleship opportunity. You know, a lot of times we do focus, we at Running Water Events, we focus on water, you know, but what we say is it's not just clean drinking water, it's for the living water of Jesus. Because without saving people eternally and spiritually, then they're still dead, you know. So yes, it's very important to educate people. It's very important to empower people. It's very important to show people that they have a reason for living, which is what they're doing at Mission on the Move. But the most important part goes back to that discipleship. The most important part goes back to Jesus. It always does. And with our friendship, that tradition, it always does. Gotta go back to Jesus. With that honor and shame, we honor people when it goes back to Jesus. So that's our hope. Hopefully you enjoyed this interview with AJ as we talked about how friends relate in ministry. Again, always going back to Jesus. Thank you for hanging out. If you enjoyed this video, want to see more like it, there's probably a subscribe button they can hit the like button. You can comment below if you want to say something or answer a question. How many countries have you visited? I don't know how many I've visited. Less than 10. AJ?
Less than 10.
Less than 10. Between 5 and 10. If Victoria were here, she would put up both hands. Have to use her toes too. But
double digits.
Double digits. Hey, thank you for hanging out so much. I'm Pastor Matt.
This is AJ Ford.
Wherever you are in the world, stay chill and food on.
Love you.